And now we are joined by Hanna Shelest, Security Studies Program Director in the Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Prism. Mrs. Shelest, greetings and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Mrs. Shelest, so my first question to you will be as follows. Can we say that the United States of America gave us a go-ahead to hit hostile targets in the territory of Russia right now?
Let's say Ukraine doesn't need a permission for this because we are acting according to the international law, and sometimes the preemptive attack against the military objects at the territory of the enemy, or in our case at the territory of aggression, are considered as the legitimate target, the legitimate aims. However, we understand that definitely as far as we are using the U.S. equipment and U.S. ammunition, it's always this question of restriction, and we remember the conversation that we had in Washington before we received HIMARS, that they would not like to see any type of escalation. However, now what we received is the green light. It is the statement that, or better say, confirmation that Ukraine has a right, Ukraine can do it, and the United States will not say anything against it.
And at least we got a capability to do that.
Definitely, but let's be honest, we had this capability from the day one, considering that we are bordering countries. As soon as you are standing just at the border, you can just throw the grenade and you're already targeting the territory of the Russian Federation. For this, you didn't need the HIMARS or the long-range missiles. Another question is that definitely in Ukrainian interest to reach the certain aerodromes from where the jets start against Ukraine, or the certain ammunition depot at the territories that are not just at the border in Belgorod region or in Crimea, but somewhere further. And in this case, yes, Ukraine need a proper ammunition, the long-range ammunition, so to be safe for our armed forces, but to target as far as necessary.
Mrs. Shelest, you recently wrote a big article about NATO. One of the issues you touched upon was the following: Ukraine, enhanced opportunity partner or aspirant. So what is Ukraine right now? And how close, or maybe how far, are we from the membership in NATO?
You know, legally we are both, because both is not the formal status. And definitely in 2019, Ukraine received this confirmation of being the aspirant. Aspirant is the country that clearly confirmed that it would like to be a member. And after we changed the constitution of Ukraine, stating that membership in NATO is in our national interest, we were confirmed to be the aspirant. Enhanced Opportunity Partnership, it is the special program created, or special status created by NATO in 2014, where only 6 countries, as for now, Australia, Jordan, Georgia, Ukraine, Finland, and Sweden, those countries who had the highest level of cooperation and highest level of trust, plus included the access to the intelligence and to the inner circle in NATO. The problem is that this program never been operational. It is not a program as the Partnership for Peace. It's more of political status to uprise, if we can say like this, among the other 40 partners of NATO, rather than the really framework for cooperation. And Ukraine, together with Georgia, for many years tried to fill it with some substance. De facto, we received certain benefits, like, for example, more Ukrainian officers started to be in the NATO headquarters, or we received access to the intelligence information in real time. Or we started to be present in the exercises that previously been open only for the NATO member states. And that allowed us during the war to receive certain information or certain ammunition that previously would be much more difficult to have. But otherwise, I mean, legally, it's not changing anything. How closer we are to the membership, it seems to me that the war brought us much closer, because Ukraine really demonstrated capabilities of our armed forces, the interoperability with our NATO partners and allies, our willingness to fight for our choice. And as for now, the question is more political, in addition to some requirements that definitely are set. But this closer or further is still, unfortunately, more in the political cabinets rather than at the military battlefield.
One more question for you. Why do we hear more and more from different parts of the world that the Russian war should end at the negotiating table? We are not told directly that we must sit down at this table. Different politicians say that Ukraine should decide when and how to do that, but they say it often. Are they maybe trying to gently lead us to this decision?
Some of them, yes, and let's be honest, they've been trying to do it since the day one of this aggression, or if not to say since the day one of 2014. But my response usually is that negotiations is not the ultimate goal. The negotiations is just the instrument or the tool. And what is our ultimate goal is up to Ukraine to decide. The question is that negotiations, honestly, each conflict is finishing with a certain type of the negotiations or, I don't know, some treaty or agreement because you need to sign some documents. Yep, anyway, you will see. But the question is what you discuss there. If we are discussing Ukrainian future, that's not the negotiations. That is more of surrendering or ultimatum of the Russian Federation. If we are discussing the Russian reparation, how they are going to pay money for the restoration of Ukraine, that's also negotiations. Yep. So that's why negotiations should not be some kind of mantra that some European politicians are trying to impose. And we need to explain it, that Ukraine is not against negotiations. We were at them in Belarus. We were on them in Istanbul, if you remember, March. We were sitting and negotiating grain deal. So Ukraine is not against the negotiations. The question is what to negotiate.
Yes, that's the question. Thank you, Mrs. Shelest. Thank you for taking part in Spotlight Ukraine. This was Hanna Shelest, Security Studies Program Director in the Foreign Policy Council Ukrainian Prism.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Latest news, trends, and analytics on all about Ukraine. Like, share, and subscribe. Any questions, proposals, and comments, contact us via email.